There is nothing deep down inside us except what we have put there ourselves. Truth is simply a compliment paid to sentences seen to be paying their way. Always strive to excel, but only on weekends. The world does not speak. Only we do. The world can, once we have programmed ourselves with a language, cause us to hold belief. But it cannot propose a language for us to speak. Only other human beings can do that. I think you can have a left that isn't culturally conservative talking about lunch bucket issues. Well, what there ought to be is an international labor organization, a confederation of the trade unions of all the countries speaking for the workers who are competing with one another, and talking about the difference in wage levels between, say, Europe and Indonesia. The usual picture of Socrates is of an ugly little plebeian who inspired a handsome young nobleman to write long dialogues on large topics. I think that a good left is a party that always thinks about the future and doesn't care much about our past sins. The difference between people and ideas is only superficial. I think of an intellectual as just being bookish, being interested in history books, utopia ideas, that kind of thing. Truth is what your contemporaries let you get away with. Freedom is the recognition of contingency. My sense of the holy is bound up with the hope that someday my remote descendants will live in a global civilization in which love is pretty much the only law. The world does not speak. Only we do. The world can, once we have programmed ourselves with a language, cause us to hold beliefs. But it cannot propose a language for us to speak. Only other human beings can do that. The orthodox tend to think that people who, like the postmodernist and me, believe neither in God nor in some suitable substitute, must feel that everything is permitted, that everybody can do what they like. What makes us moral beings is that there are some acts we believe we ought to die rather than commit, but now suppose that one has in fact done one of the things one could not have imagined doing, and finds that one is still alive. At that point, one's choices are suicide, a life of bottomless self-disgust, and an attempt to live so as never to do such a thing again. Dewey recommends the third choice. The conscious need of the strong poet defined broadly as the creator of new metaphors, to come to terms with the blind impress which chance has given him, to make a self for himself by redescribing that impress in terms which are, if only marginally, his own. The difference between people and ideas is only superficial. You cannot urge national political renewal on the basis of descriptions of fact. You have to describe the country in terms of what you passionately hope it will become, as well as in the terms of what you know it to be now. You have to be loyal to a dream country rather than to the one which you wake up early morning. Unless such loyalty exists, the ideal has no chance of becoming actual. The reason for thinking that there will be no last philosophy is simply that no answer can fail to be an answer to a question, and no question can guarantee its own permanent relevance. A talent for speaking differently, rather than for arguing well, is the chief instrument of cultural change. This cultural left thinks more about stigma than about money, more about deep and hidden psychosexual motivations than about shallow and evident greed. If we look to people who make no mistakes, who are always on the right side, who never apologized for tyrants or unjust wars, we shall have few heroes and heroines. Solidarity is not discovered by reflection but created. The homosexual, the Negro, and the female are best seen not as inevitable classifications of human beings but rather as invention that have done more harm than good. Ontology is more like a playground than a science. Complaints about the social irresponsibility of the intellectual typically concern the intellectual's tendency to marginalize herself, to move out from one community by interior identification of herself with some other community, for example, another country or historical period. It is not clear that those who thus marginalize themselves can be criticized for socially irresponsible toward a community of which one does not think of oneself as a member. Otherwise, runway slaves and tuneless under the Berlin Wall would be irresponsible. Truth is what your contemporaries let you get away with. Academic disciplines are subject to being overtaken by attacks of knowingness, a state of mind and soul that prevents shudders of awe and makes one immune to enthusiasm. A talent for speaking differently, rather than for arguing well, is the chief instrument of cultural change. Truth is simply a compliment paid to sentences seen to be paying their way. Nowadays, to say that we are clever animals is not to say something philosophical and pessimistic but something political and hopeful, namely, if we can work together, we can make ourselves into whatever we are clever and courageous enough to imagine ourselves becoming. This is to set aside Kant's question, what is man? And to substitute the question, what sort of world can we prepare for our great-grandchildren? We are equal inhabitants of a paradise of individuals in which everybody has the right to be understood. There are credentials for admission to our democratic society. You have to be educated in order to be a participant in our conversation, so we are going to go right on trying to discredit you in the eyes of your children, trying to strip your fundamentalist religious community of dignity, trying to make your views seem silly rather than discussable. We are not so inclusivism as to tolerate intolerance such as yours. I never dated a girl whose beauty was more attractive than her intellect. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. Courage isn't having the strength to go on, it is going on when you don't have strength. Sex energy is the creative energy of all geniuses. There never has been, and never will be, a great leader, builder or artist lacking in the driving force of sex.